Hey there, and welcome to Bedtime History. If you're just settling in, grab a blanket, fluff up your pillow, and let the outside world drift away for a little while. You're in exactly the right place if you're looking for a quiet escape, somewhere between history's forgotten corners, whispered myths, and the kind of stories that feel like lullabies for your mind. I'm Jorge, and I am your host for tonight at the Bedtime History. Let's wind together the roads of ancient tales, dusty manuscripts, and half-remembered legends, and turn them into something soft enough to fall asleep to. No rush, no noise, just slow, soothing storytelling under the stars of your imagination. So dim the lights, maybe leave a fan running for that gentle background hum, and let's begin tonight's journey together. Because history doesn't always have to be loud to be unforgettable. Sweet dreams, and thank you for being here. Tonight, we're walking the sacred path of Delphi under a dusky twilight sky. You can feel the cool stone beneath your bare feet, the scent of wild thyme and olive trees curling through the air like incense. Somewhere in the distance, a priestess chants softly, her voice echoing off the limestone cliffs. A faint breeze. The soft flicker of imagined torchlight. This is the heart of ancient Greece, where mortals once begged gods for favors they probably didn't deserve, and where tonight, we'll meet one man who dared to challenge divine talent. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling especially sleepy, leave a comment with where you're listening from, and what time it is there. It's oddly soothing knowing people all over the world are drifting off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You can feel the cool stone beneath your bare feet, the scent of wild thyme and olive trees curling through the air like incense. Somewhere in the distance, a priestess chants softly, her voice echoing off the limestone cliffs. This is the heart of ancient Greece, where mortals once begged gods for favors they probably didn't deserve, and where today, we'll meet one man who dared to challenge divine talent. You're stepping into a world where music was more than entertainment, it was power. Apollo himself, god of song and prophecy, walked these same paths, strumming his golden lyre with effortless grace. And yet, not everyone who picked up an instrument could match his brilliance. In fact, some tried so hard, and failed so spectacularly, that the gods took offense. One such man was Thamyris, a bard whose ego outweighed his skill by miles. He thought he could out-sing the Muses themselves. Spoiler, he couldn't. And if you think divine judges are forgiving, well, you probably won't survive this. Before we dive into his story, quick favor, if you're enjoying this gentle descent into myth and melody, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's oddly soothing knowing people all over the world are drifting off together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun has just dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the temple steps. The Pythia, Apollo's oracle, sits in her tripod, swaying gently as she inhales the sacred fumes. Priests light oil lamps, their flickering glow illuminating the carved friezes of gods and heroes. Somewhere nearby, a group of young men gather around a fire, passing a simple wooden lyre between them. Their voices rise in unsteady harmony, singing tales of war, love, and the occasional drunken goat chase. This is the world Thamyris lived in, a place where music wasn't just heard, it was felt. Bards were revered, their songs memorized and passed down through generations. But not all singers were equal. Some had true talent. Others, like Thamyris, had ambition but no skill. And when ambition met arrogance, even the gods paid attention. You might be wondering why a tale about a bad singer matters enough to be remembered for millennia. Well, because it wasn't just about music. It was about hubris, the dangerous kind that makes humans forget their place in the cosmic order. It was about pride clashing with divinity, and what happens when mortals dare to compete with gods. So, picture yourself standing at the edge of the sacred grove, watching as Thamyris steps forward, lyre in hand, ready to make the worst musical decision of his life. There's no turning back now. The Muses are waiting. Apollo is watching. And the stars above Delphi twinkle in quiet anticipation. Apollo stands at the edge of the sacred grove, golden robes catching the firelight like liquid sunlight. He's not just a god, he's the god of song, poetry, prophecy, and just about everything else that made ancient Greeks feel fancy. His presence alone is enough to make even the most confident bard fumble their tuning pegs. You can almost hear the rustle of divine robes as he shifts his weight, one hand resting casually on his lyre, as if reminding everyone that yes, he invented this whole musical thing in the first place. Now imagine Thamyris standing across from him, gripping his own humble instrument with the kind of determination usually reserved for warriors about to charge into battle. The man has no idea what he's up against. Apollo isn't just good, he's impossibly, effortlessly perfect. His voice doesn't crack. His fingers don't slip. His lyrics are poetic, precise, and probably written by himself while lounging on a cloud somewhere. And yet, here's Thamyris, thinking he has a shot. Let's take a quick detour to appreciate how absurd this is. We're talking about a mortal trying to compete with a god who literally wrote the rulebook on music. It's like bringing a kazoo to a symphony competition. A god who once strummed his lyre so beautifully that the sun itself paused mid-arc just to listen. This is not someone you challenge unless you either have a death wish or an ego the size of Mount Olympus. And Thamyris? Oh, he's got both. Historians still argue whether he was truly arrogant or just tragically delusional. Some say he genuinely believed in his own talent, convinced that his songs were just as worthy as those sung by gods. Others think he was playing a dangerous game, maybe trying to prove a point, or perhaps hoping to win favor with Apollo himself. Either way, it didn't end well. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about Apollo's lyre. Because this wasn't just any instrument, it was a masterpiece, crafted by Hermes himself, who, fun fact also, invented the first pair of sneakers. The lyre had a tortoiseshell body and strings spun from pure divine light. When Apollo played, the world listened. Rivers slowed their flow. Birds stopped mid-flight. Even the stars seemed to hum along. So when Thamyris stepped forward to challenge him, it wasn't just a performance. It was a cosmic event. You can almost picture the scene, the crowd hushed, the air thick with anticipation. The Muses, even the musically inclined deities, sit in a semicircle, watching with expressions that range from amusement to outright pity. Apollo tilts his head slightly, as if waiting for Thamyris to reconsider. But the bard doesn't back down. He clears his throat, adjusts his grip on the lyre, and prepares to sing. And then, well, let's just say the results weren't exactly divine. Thamyris wasn't just a bad singer, he was spectacularly bad. Like, the kind of bad that made even the most forgiving audiences wince and look for exits that didn't exist. Picture this, you're sitting among the spectators, clutching your wine cup as Thamyris clears his throat one last time, ready to unleash his masterpiece. The firelight flickers across his face, highlighting the confidence in his eyes, the same kind of confidence that makes someone try to outrun a charging bull because they feel fast today. Now, let's be fair, maybe he wasn't entirely talentless. After all, people still remembered his name centuries later, which is more than can be said for most ancient buskers. But by divine standards, He was not great. His voice wavered unpredictably, like a goat bleating into a wind tunnel. His lyrics were clumsy, filled with awkward rhymes and overly dramatic metaphors about love and war that somehow never quite matched. And yet, despite it all, he believed. There's something oddly endearing about that kind of stubborn optimism. You almost want to root for him, even if deep down, you know this isn't going to end well. Some ancient sources describe him as a Thracian bard, a traveling musician who made a living singing at feasts and festivals. Others say he was once a respected performer, known more for his storytelling than his actual musical skill. Either way, he had enough fame to get invited to high-profile events, and enough ego to think he could go toe-to-toe with gods. Fun fact, in some versions of the myth, Thamyris was actually pretty good, at least until he got greedy. Legend has it that after winning several mortal competitions, he started bragging that no one, not even the Muses themselves, could match his talent. That's when things took a turn. Because if there's one thing the gods absolutely hate, it's mortals thinking they can outshine them. Especially when it comes to art. And so, the challenge was issued. A sing-off between Thamyris and the Muses, with Apollo himself overseeing the competition. It was supposed to be a test of skill, but really, it was more like a cosmic roast battle where the punishment for losing was extremely severe. You can already see where this is going. But before we dive into the performance itself, let's take a moment to appreciate just how ridiculous this whole situation is. We're talking about a mortal who thought he could beat goddesses who literally invented music. The Muses weren't just background singers, they were the original creators of poetry, song, and dance. They inspired generations of artists, philosophers, and historians. Their voices could move mountains, calm storms, and make even the grumpiest centaurs put down their clubs and start writing sonnets. So what did Thamyris have going for him? Confidence, delusion, maybe a decent haircut. As the crowd leans forward in anticipation, the tension in the air is thick enough to slice with an olive branch. Apollo stands nearby, watching with that unreadable godly expression that probably translates to something like, "Oh boy, here we go." The Muses exchange glances, half amused, half concerned. Somewhere in the back, a priest mutters a prayer under his breath, hoping this doesn't end with lightning striking the stage. And then, finally, Thamyris begins to play. The first note rings out, tentative, wobbly, and slightly off-key. You can almost feel the collective wince ripple through the audience like a breeze rustling olive branches. Thamyris doesn't notice. Or if he does, he chooses to ignore it, because he's already launched into his song with all the confidence of a man who once tried to wrestle a river and won. You're sitting among the spectators, watching as he plucks at his lyre with determined fingers. His voice is bold, but not in a good way. It cracks unpredictably, slipping from one register to another like an over-enthusiastic goat trying to climb a tree. The lyrics? Let's just say they're ambitious. He's telling the tale of his own exploits, love affairs that may or may not have happened, battles he might have witnessed from a safe distance, and heroic deeds that sound suspiciously like someone else's story retold with himself inserted as the main character. It's the kind of performance that makes you want to look away, but you can't. It's hypnotic in its sheer audacity. Meanwhile, the Muses sit in their semicircle, expressionless. Their divine ears are perfectly attuned to every sour note, every awkward pause, every time Thamyris' voice leaps up an octave like a startled squirrel. They don't laugh, not yet, but you can see it in their eyes. This is going to be good. Now, let's take a quick detour into ancient Greek musical competitions, because this wasn't some random talent show thrown together on a whim. These contests were serious business. Bards trained for years, memorizing epic poetry, perfecting their vocal technique, and learning how to weave music and storytelling into something transcendent. Winning one of these competitions could bring fame, fortune, and even divine favor, if the gods were feeling generous that day. But losing, that was a different story. Especially when the stakes were high. Thamyris didn't just challenge the Muses, he insulted them. Said no one could match his skill. Called them overrated. Maybe even implied they owed him inspiration money. And now, here he was, proving exactly why mortals shouldn't talk big in front of deities. Still, you have to admire his nerve. Most people would have bowed out the second Apollo showed up. Not Thamyris. He was all in, strumming away like he hadn't just signed his own cosmic death warrant. As he reaches the chorus of his song, his voice swells dramatically. He throws in a flourish of notes that sounds impressive until it becomes clear he has no idea how to land them. There's a moment of silence, just a beat too long, as the final note hangs in the air, wavering like a candle caught in a draft. Then, finally, he lowers his hands from the lyre and beams. Well, that was something. The crowd remains silent. No applause. No cheers. Just the soft crackle of firelight and the occasional cough from someone trying very hard not to react. And then, slowly, the Muses rise. Thamyris stands there, beaming like he's just won an ancient Greek Grammy, but the silence is deafening. You can feel it pressing in from all sides, like when you tell a joke and no one laughs, but instead of awkward chuckles, you get the weight of divine judgment hanging over your head. The Muses don't clap. They don't nod approvingly. They don't even blink. And then, without a word, they begin to sing. The first note is so pure it makes the air itself tremble. It's not loud, it doesn't need to be. It's effortless, like sunlight slipping through temple columns at dawn. Then comes the harmony, layered and impossibly rich, wrapping around the audience like a warm woolen shawl on a cold night. The Muses' voices rise and fall in perfect unison, weaving a melody so intricate it feels like watching a master sculptor carve marble with nothing but their breath. You lean forward without realizing it. This isn't just music, this is art, spun from something older than time itself. Their song tells a story too, but where Thamyris stumbled through exaggerated tales of his own greatness, the Muses paint a vivid picture of creation, of rivers singing to the sea, of stars whispering secrets to the moon. Their lyrics are poetic, precise, and devastatingly elegant. And then, as if that wasn't enough, they start improvising. They take the same tune and twist it into something new, shifting melodies like dancers changing steps mid-performance. One muse sings a soft counterpoint while another lifts the melody higher, her voice soaring like a bird caught in a thermal current. It's playful, almost teasing, as if they're showing off not because they have to, but because they can. You glance back at Thamyris. His face has gone pale. He's still holding his lyre, but his fingers have gone limp, the instrument dangling uselessly at his side. He knows. Everyone knows. This isn't a competition anymore. It's a lesson. A cosmic roast wrapped in velvet notes and divine restraint. The Muses finish their performance with a final, lingering chord that seems to echo long after the sound has faded. And then, silence again. But this time, it's different. This time, it's full of understanding. Full of awe. Full of the quiet realization that some things were never meant to be challenged. Apollo finally speaks. "Your turn," he says, voice calm, almost amused. Thamyris opens his mouth. Closes it. Swallows hard. He knows what's coming. Thamyris stands frozen, his lyre dangling at his side like a forgotten relic. The Muses' song still lingers in the air, wrapping around the sacred grove like an invisible mist, soft, shimmering, and utterly untouchable. He opens his mouth to speak, but nothing comes out. His throat feels dry, his fingers numb. For the first time in his life, he's been truly silenced. You can almost hear the collective inhale from the crowd. This is it, the moment of truth. Thamyris has spent years building his reputation, weaving tales of love, war, and heroism into songs that once drew crowds at feasts and festivals. But now he's standing in front of the original creators of music itself, and he knows, deep down, that he never had a chance. Apollo tilts his head slightly, waiting. The god doesn't look angry, just mildly amused, like someone watching a child try to wrestle with a goat and failing spectacularly. There's no mockery in his expression, just the quiet patience of someone who's seen this kind of thing before. And honestly, he probably has. The Muses remain silent, their expressions unreadable. They don't need to gloat. Their performance was enough. Finally, Thamyris clears his throat. It's a weak sound, barely audible over the crackling firelight. When he speaks, his voice is low, almost reverent. I concede. The words hang in the air, simple but heavy. You can feel the weight of them pressing down on the entire gathering. A challenge has been issued. A contest has been held. And now, the loser has admitted defeat. But in ancient Greece, conceding wasn't always enough. Especially when you'd insulted the divine. There's a long pause before Apollo finally speaks again. Then let justice be done. The phrase is soft, almost gentle, but it carries the full force of cosmic law. You can feel the shift in the air, the way the stars seem to dim ever so slightly as fate begins to turn its wheel. And then, the punishment begins. It starts subtly. At first, you might not even notice. Thamyris tries to lift his lyre again, fingers trembling as he plucks at the strings. But the sound that comes out isn't right. It's flat, dull, like water poured into an empty amphora. He frowns, adjusting his grip, trying again. Still nothing. He looks up at Apollo, eyes wide with sudden understanding. His hands drop to his sides. His voice is gone too. Thamyris stumbles back a step, his fingers twitching at his sides like he's trying to grasp something that isn't there. His mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out, not even a whisper. The lyre still hangs from his grip, but now it feels heavier than ever, like a weight he never asked to carry. You can see the panic creeping into his eyes. Not because he's afraid of divine wrath, though, honestly, he should be, but because he finally understands what he's lost. His voice, his music, his gift. Whatever skill he once had, whatever spark of inspiration made him stand before crowds and sing, is gone. Stripped away in an instant. Apollo watches him without expression, arms crossed over his golden robes. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't need to. This punishment isn't about rage, it's about balance. Mortals who challenge the gods must learn their place. And sometimes, that lesson is written in silence. The Muses remain seated, their faces unreadable. Some say they pitied Thamyris in that moment. Others claim they watched with satisfaction, knowing justice had been served. But none of them speak. They don't need to. The air itself seems to hum with finality. And then, just when you think the story is over, Apollo takes a slow step forward. You sought to rival the divine, he says, voice calm but firm. And now, you will carry the song forever. A hush falls over the crowd. Even the firelight seems to flicker uncertainly, as if unsure whether to illuminate this moment or let it vanish into shadow. Because here's the thing about divine punishments, they're rarely simple. There's always a twist. A price to pay beyond mere suffering. And for Thamyris, this curse isn't just about losing his voice. It's about carrying something eternal, something unshakable. He tries to speak again, desperate, pleading, but nothing comes out. Only silence. Then, slowly, the first note begins. It starts low, barely audible beneath the rustling leaves and distant chirps of night birds. A single haunting melody drifts through the sacred grove, weaving its way through the air like mist curling around temple columns. It's soft, almost lullaby-like, but there's something wrong about it. Something unsettling in the way it clings to your bones, how it refuses to fade. Thamyris freezes. His eyes widen. Because now, the song isn't his to control. The melody grows stronger, winding its way through the sacred grove like an unseen thread pulling at the very fabric of reality. It's not loud, no booming chorus or dramatic crescendo, but it feels heavy, as if the air itself is bending to carry its weight. You can hear it in the rustling leaves, in the distant hoot of an owl, even in the soft creak of temple wood settling under the night sky. And Thamyris? He hears it too. Only now, it's not just around him, it's in him. He clutches his head, fingers digging into his temples as if trying to physically push the sound away. But there's no escaping it. The song has taken root inside him, threading through his thoughts like ivy climbing a crumbling wall. Every breath he takes seems to hum with its presence. Every heartbeat pulses to its rhythm. It's soft, persistent, and utterly unrelenting. Apollo watches in silence, his golden robes catching the firelight like liquid sunlight. There's no anger in his expression, no divine fury, just the quiet certainty of someone who knows exactly what they've done and why it was necessary. Because this punishment isn't just about silencing Thamyris. It's about making him remember. Historians still argue whether Apollo intended for the curse to be eternal. Some ancient texts suggest that Thamyris would one day be released from the song's grasp, if he could learn true humility. Others claim the melody was meant to follow him through every life he ever lived, whispering in his ears long after his mortal body had turned to dust. Either way, it was a fate worse than death. You glance at the Muses again. Their expressions are unreadable, but you catch the smallest flicker of sympathy in one of their eyes. Perhaps even gods feel pity sometimes. Thamyris stumbles forward, his steps uneven, his hands trembling. His voice is gone, but the song remains, always just beneath the surface, waiting to rise again. And somehow, impossibly, it feels like it's growing. Not louder, not faster, but deeper, more intricate, as if it's learning from him, feeding on his regret, his fear, his endless, wordless plea for silence. A priest near the edge of the gathering crosses himself, muttering a prayer under his breath. A young boy watching from behind his mother's skirts shivers involuntarily. Even the firelight seems to dim slightly, as though reluctant to illuminate this moment any longer. Because now, Thamyris isn't just cursed with silence. He's cursed with a song that will never end. The song is no longer just a melody, it's alive. It coils around Thamyris like an unseen vine, creeping into the spaces between his thoughts, settling into the marrow of his bones. He stumbles forward another step, his breath shallow, his hands trembling as if trying to grasp something that isn't there. The sacred grove feels different now, quieter, heavier, as though even the stars have leaned in to listen. You can hear it too. That low, persistent hum threading through the night air, curling around your own thoughts like mist slipping beneath a doorframe. It's not loud, not jarring, but it lingers like a lullaby half remembered from childhood, or the echo of a voice you once knew but can't quite place. And somehow, impossibly, it feels like it's growing. Not louder, not faster, but deeper, more intricate, as if it's learning from him, feeding on his regret, his fear, his endless, wordless plea for silence. Apollo watches without moving, his golden robes catching the firelight like liquid sunlight. His expression is unreadable, neither cruel nor kind, just final. This was never about punishment alone. It was about balance. About reminding mortals where they stood in the grand cosmic order. And now, Thamyris carries that lesson with him forever. But why? Why choose him? Why give this man, who had already lost everything, the burden of an eternal song? Because not all curses are meant to destroy. Some are meant to teach. Some ancient sources suggest that Apollo didn't just strip Thamyris of his voice, he gave him something else in return. A gift wrapped in sorrow, a story stitched into sound. Because while Thamyris could no longer sing by choice, he would always carry the song. Not just for himself, but for anyone who listened closely enough. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point. Because legends say that long after Thamyris vanished from mortal memory, his song remained. Woven into the wind, whispered through olive trees, carried on the breath of poets who swore they'd heard something strange in their dreams. A melody soft and sorrowful, drifting through time like smoke curling off a dying flame. A song that never ends. The song didn't vanish with Thamyris. It couldn't. Not when it had been woven into the very fabric of time itself, carried on the wind, whispered through olive groves, and tucked into the corners of ancient hymns like a secret waiting to be found. You can almost hear it now, if you listen closely. A soft hum beneath the rustling leaves. A lullaby in the hush of twilight. It drifts through the centuries, slipping between the lines of forgotten verses and half-remembered ballads, hiding in the pauses between breaths. Some say it's still out there, lingering in the quiet spaces where music meets memory. In the echo of a lyre string plucked too gently. In the hush of an empty temple at dawn. In the dreams of poets who wake with a melody on their lips but no words to name it. Because that's what Thamyris left behind, not just silence, not just sorrow, but a story told in sound. One that never needed his voice to survive. Ancient scholars tried to trace its path. Some claimed fragments of the song appeared in early Greek hymns, buried beneath layers of poetic meter and divine praise. Others insisted it surfaced in Roman lullabies, sung by mothers who didn't know why the tune felt so achingly familiar. There are even whispers that medieval monks, copying old manuscripts by candlelight, sometimes heard a strange melody drifting through the scriptorium late at night, one that vanished the moment they tried to follow it. But here's the thing about a song that never ends. You don't always realize you're hearing it until it's already inside you. And maybe that's how Thamyris' curse became something else entirely. Because while he lost his voice, his story lived on, not as a warning, but as a whisper in the dark, a gentle reminder that even the smallest voices can echo forever. So tonight, as you lie beneath your blanket of stars, let the song find you. Let it curl around your thoughts like mist over a moonlit sea. Don't fight it. Just listen. Because somewhere, deep in the hush of history, the melody is still playing. The story of Thamyris didn't end with his silence. In fact, it only grew louder in the centuries that followed, whispered through olive groves, etched into scrolls, and sung in hushed voices by poets who feared they might be next. You'd think a man cursed by Apollo himself would vanish from history, lost to time like so many other forgotten mortals. But Thamyris? He lingered. Not in temples or statues, but in stories. And not just any stories. Ones that blurred the line between myth and warning. Some ancient writers tried to pin him down as a cautionary tale, a symbol of what happens when pride outpaces talent. Others painted him as something more tragic, a misunderstood artist who dared to challenge the gods and paid the price. And then there were those who saw him as an inspiration, a man who almost reached the divine, even if he failed spectacularly. Let's take a look at how the greats remembered him. Pseudo-Apollodorus, the ever-reliable, and sometimes wildly creative, mythographer, mentions Thamyris briefly in his Bibliotheca, describing him as a Thracian bard who challenged the Muses to a contest and was punished for his hubris. Short and to the point, but it does the job. No need for dramatic flair when you've got divine justice on your side. Then there's Pausanias, the ancient travel writer who wandered all over Greece scribbling notes about everything from sacred sites to local legends. In his description of Greece, He tells us that Thamyris' story was still being told in certain cult rituals, though whether people were honoring him or using him as a cosmic scarecrow remains unclear. But perhaps the most interesting version comes from Hyginus, the Roman scribe known for collecting myths with varying degrees of accuracy. In his fabulae, he describes Thamyris not just as a bad singer, but as a liar. According to Hyginus, the bard bragged about betting the Muses themselves, an accusation that, if true, probably didn't help his case. And then there's Ovid, always the dramatist. In his Metamorphoses, he paints Thamyris as a figure of tragedy, a man whose arrogance led to his undoing. But unlike the others, Ovid doesn't just tell the story, he feels it. His version is filled with sorrow, with longing, with the kind of poetic melancholy that makes you want to grab a lyre and write a sad ballad about your own life choices. So which version is true? Well, none of them. Or all of them. Myth has a way of shifting depending on who's telling it. And Thamyris, poor soul, became a canvas for every poet, philosopher, and moralist who wanted to remind their audience, don't try to outshine the gods. Because if you do, they'll make sure you never forget it. So, was Thamyris really that bad? Or did he just get caught in the wrong cosmic game of musical chairs? Because here's the thing about myths, especially the ones involving gods and mortals, they're rarely as simple as they seem. Sure, the official story says he was arrogant, talentless, and got exactly what he deserved. But what if there's more to it? What if this wasn't just a divine roast session gone too far, but a rebellion wrapped in song? Some scholars think Thamyris might not have been a fool at all. Instead, they argue, he could have been a symbol of human creativity daring to stand beside the divine. A mortal who refused to accept that inspiration belonged only to the gods. That kind of thinking doesn't play well on Mount Olympus, but it makes for one hell of a story. And then there's the question of why Apollo chose such an unusual punishment. Stripping away Thamyris' voice? That makes sense. Mortals shouldn't challenge gods without consequences. But making him carry a song forever? That feels personal. Almost poetic. Like the god was trying to teach him something deeper than humility. Maybe Apollo didn't hate Thamyris. Maybe he pitied him. After all, music was sacred to Apollo, not just as entertainment, but as truth, as power, as connection. And here was Thamyris, a man who tried to claim ownership over something bigger than himself. Not because he wanted to destroy it, but because he wanted to be part of it. Was that arrogance? Or was it ambition? Even ancient poets couldn't agree. Some saw him as a warning, others as a tragic figure. And a few, just a handful, hinted that maybe, just maybe, his curse wasn't entirely cruel. Because while he lost his voice, he gained something else, immortality through sound. His song survived. His name endured. Which is more than most mortals can say. So when you hear the whispers of his melody drifting through forgotten verses, through Roman lullabies and medieval hymns, ask yourself, was he punished? Or was he chosen? Because sometimes, the gods don't destroy the ones they dislike. Sometimes, they remember them. Thamyris wasn't the first mortal to overestimate his abilities. He wasn't even the most tragically arrogant one. That title probably goes to someone like Icarus, who tried to fly too close to the sun and ended up as a cautionary skydiving accident. But he was unique in one way. He challenged the gods not with weapons or armies, but with music. And that made all the difference. Because while other mortals lost limbs, sanity, or their entire family line for defying divine authority, Thamyris' punishment was different. Subtly cruel. Poetically eternal. Instead of death, exile, or transformation into something inconveniently scaly, he was cursed with silence, and an unending song. Let's compare him to some of mythology's other big talkers. Take Niobe, for example, another unfortunate soul who thought she could rival the gods. She bragged that she was superior to Leto because she had more children. Whoops, bad move. Apollo and Artemis responded by killing every single one of her sons and daughters with divine archery practice. Talk about overshooting the lesson. Or how about Arachne, the talented weaver who dared claim her skills rivaled Athena's? The goddess gave her a fair challenge, then turned her into a spider when she won. No second chances, no mercy. Just 8 legs and a lifetime of spinning webs in quiet, dusty corners. Even Prometheus, who technically did the gods a solid by creating humans, got punished for giving those same humans fire. His penalty: eternal liver torture. Every day, an eagle would eat his liver. Every night, it would grow back. That's dedication to cosmic discipline. But Thamyris? His punishment was quiet. It didn't involve bloodshed, dismemberment, or creepy crawlies. It was slow, lingering, almost intimate. His voice, the very thing that defined him, was taken away, replaced with a melody that followed him through time. Not painful in the traditional sense, but undeniably haunting. Some might even say it was poetic justice. Because unlike Niobe or Arachne, Thamyris didn't lose everything out of spite. He lost it because he tried. Because he believed, naively or nobly, that art could be shared, even between mortals and gods. Which raises an interesting question. Was this truly a punishment? Or was it a reminder? A whisper across centuries, teaching future generations that inspiration doesn't belong to anyone, not even the gods. As centuries passed, the story of Thamyris began to shift, not in the grand halls of philosophers or the scrolls of scholars, but in the quiet corners of Roman nurseries and Greek hearthside gatherings. What had once been a tale of divine retribution slowly softened into something gentler, a bedtime story for children who needed lullabies more than lessons in hubris. You can almost picture it, parents tucking their little ones beneath woolen blankets, whispering the legend of the bard who sang too boldly, his voice now forever drifting through olive groves and moonlit hills. The curse became less about punishment and more about mystery. The song? Not a warning, but a comfort. A melody that carried through the night air like a breeze curling around temple columns, soft and endless. By the time Rome ruled the Mediterranean, the myth had taken on a new shape. Poets wove Thamyris' fate into their verses not as a cautionary figure, but as a poetic echo, a symbol of inspiration lost and found again in dreams. His name appeared in the margins of lullabies sung by Roman mothers, woven between lines about gentle winds and sleeping stars. The harsh edges of divine wrath had worn down, leaving behind only the hush of an eternal song. Even Pliny the Elder, not exactly known for his bedtime storytelling skills, mentioned Thamyris in passing, not as a foolish mortal punished for pride, but as a man whose melody still drifted through sacred groves long after he was gone. Some say, he wrote, that if you listen closely on a windless night, you may yet hear the remnants of his song. And so, what had once been a cosmic roast turned into a whispered promise, that even silence could sing, that even failure could become something beautiful. Tonight, as you lie beneath your own blanket of stars, let the story settle over you like a warm shawl. Let the melody find you, not as a warning, but as a companion. Because sometimes, the best lullabies aren't the ones we remember, they're the ones we almost hear, just before sleep takes us. The song is quieter now. Not gone, never truly gone, but softer, like the last ember in a dying fire, or the final note of a lullaby that lingers just long enough to send you drifting. You can feel it in the hush between breaths, in the slow settling of your thoughts, in the way the world seems to lean in ever so slightly as if listening with you. It's not urgent anymore. No longer curling around your bones like an unanswered question. Just a gentle hum beneath the weight of sleep, threading through your dreams like a whisper from another time. Thamyris' voice was taken from him, but his song? That he kept. And somehow, impossibly, it found its way to you tonight. Not as punishment, not as warning, but as something else entirely. A gift wrapped in silence. A melody carried through centuries just so you could hear it now, in this quiet moment, when the world feels small and soft and still. Apollo's lesson wasn't about pride or arrogance or even talent, it was about balance. About remembering that some things are meant to be heard, not owned. That inspiration doesn't belong to mortals or gods, it moves between them, slipping through fingers like sand, waiting for someone willing to listen instead of claim. And maybe that's why Thamyris' story survived. Not because it warned against hubris, but because it reminded us that even the smallest voices can echo forever. That sometimes, losing your voice isn't the end, it's the beginning of a different kind of song. One that doesn't need words to be understood. So let it stay with you, just a little longer. Let it settle into the spaces between thoughts, into the corners of your mind where dreams begin to form. Don't chase it. Don't try to hold it too tightly. Just let it be. The path of Delphi fades behind us now, winding back into the hills of memory. The Pythia has returned to her dreams. The temple stands silent once more. But some stories don't end, they echo, whispered through olive groves, carried on the hush of twilight, tucked into the corners of ancient hymns like secrets waiting to be found. If you enjoyed this quiet corner of history, don't forget to like, share, and hit that bell so you never miss another bedtime tale from the past. And remember, just because the stars above have seen everything, doesn't mean they won't listen to your dreams too. A final, warm whisper. Sweet dreams, traveler. Until next time.